Hello students, so today we are going to study about the exercise questions of chapter number 10, that is how do organism reproduce. Okay, so the first question is asexual reproduction takes place through budding in which of the organisms. Okay, now if we talk about amoeba, yeast, plasmodium and leishmania. So if we talk about amoeba, okay, so amoeba reproduces through binary fission. Okay, and if we talk about leishmania, leishmania reproduces through binary fission. So amoeba and leishmania both reproduces through binary fission. If we talk about the next option is given as plasmodium and yeast. Okay, so if we talk about plasmodium, okay, so plasmodium reproduces through multiple fission. Okay, so one option is left, that is yeast. So yeast reproduces through budding. So the correct answer is budding. This is the question number 1. Now let us talk about the next question. And the next question is, which of the following is not a part of the female reproductive system in human beings? So which of the following is not a part of the female reproductive system in human beings? So let us talk about the first one is given as ovary, the second is uterus, vas deferens and fallopian tubes. So if we talk about uterus, ovary, uterus, okay, and fallopian tube, they all are parts of the female reproductive system. Okay, and the next one is given as vas deferens. Now vas deferens is a part of the male reproductive system and it is connected to the testis. So the correct answer is vas deferens. Okay, the question number 3 is anther contains what? Sepal, ovules, carpel or pollen grains. Okay, so anther contains what? Sepals or ovules or carpel or pollen grains. So let us try to understand this. This is again a very simple question. So sepals and ovules, carpel and pollen grain. Carpel and pollen grain. So let us try to recall that. Sepals are the part of the flower. These are the green color part of the flower. Okay. Ovules are a part of the female reproductive part, that is called as carpel or pistil. Ovules are present inside the ovary and we have already seen that ovules changes into seed and ovary changes into fruit after the fertilization. Carpel is the female reproductive part. Okay, so sepal is the part of the flower. Okay, and ovules are a part of the carpel or pistil and carpel is the female reproductive part. So they are asking what is the part of the anther. So anther actually is a part which is present in the stamen. So stamen is having two parts, pollen grain, anther is having two parts, that is anther and filament. Okay, and anther produces pollen grains. So anther produces pollen grains, and so stamen contains anther and anther produces pollen grain and pollen grain contain male gametes. So I hope you have understood that anther contains pollen grains. So let us move to the next question. And the next question is question number 4. Okay. So question number 4 says, what are the advantages of sexual reproduction over asexual reproduction? Okay, so what are the basically advantages of sexual reproduction over asexual? Now, if we talk about a main advantage of sexual reproduction over asexual reproduction is that in sexual reproduction we have more variations, but in asexual reproduction we have very less variations. Okay, or we can say the plants which reproduce through, or the organism which reproduce through asexual reproduction are almost genetically similar to their parents, but the organisms which are produced through sexual reproduction are not genetically similar. They are very much different from each other. So I have told you, if you remember question number 4, I have already told you when we were discussing about the uh, sexual, why sexual mode of reproduction is required for or used by the more complex organism. So in that I have told you, if an organism reproduces, okay, and okay, so one organism is reproducing, and then when it reproduces it will have some variations. So the second generation will have some variations which it has. So we can write second will have some variation, that we can write as V. Then when the second generation will reproduce, it will have some more variations. So we can say V plus V1, and then it again reproduces, then fourth generation will be there, it will have V plus V1 plus V2. So it will have every time one and one variation will increase if it reproduces asexually. But suppose the fourth generation decide to do sexual reproduction, so how many basic variation it has? Fourth generation will have 3 variations. So variation is equal to 3. And then another organism from the same group of organism also reproduces asexually. It also have 3 variations. Then the fifth generation will have how many variations? 3 plus 3, 6 variations. So we can see here total number of variations have increased in a single step. Okay, so this is the actual advantage of the sexual reproduction, to create more variations in lesser time period. And what is the advantage of variations? Already we have discussed that variations helps in the adaptation of the organism. It allows the organism to survive in an environment so that organism can live, and it will not allow the organism to be wiped out. Okay, so if you see here, already I have written here, in a sexual reproduction the offsprings are almost identical to their parents because variations are very less. So much genetic variation is not possible in asexual. Even if it is there, they are very less. In so this disadvantage is there because it inhibits the evolution of the organism, because variations will lead to evolution also. Okay, so more variations, more evolution will take place. In sexual reproduction, the offspring, although similar to their parents, are not identical. This is because they receive some genes from mother and some from father. Means half of our DNA comes from the one parent and the other half of the DNA comes from other parent. Because of the mixing of genes of mother and father in various different combinations, we have genetic variations, and these variations help us to adapt, to survive, and to evolve in the nature. So that is why it is important for complex organism, or the complex organism prefer sexual reproduction over asexual reproduction. So let us talk about question number 5. What are the functions performed by testis in human beings? Very simple. Testis has basically two functions. It produces a sex hormone called as testosterone. Okay, and the second function is it also produces male gametes called as sperms. So testis is doing two functions. And testosterone, already we have discussed the function of testosterone is that testosterone control the secondary sexual characteristics during the adolescence period, and it also controls production of sperms. Okay, now why does menstruation occur? The question is, why does menstruation occur? Question number 6. Already we have discussed in our previous videos that why does menstruation occur. So I have already told you, if the egg is not fertilized, now after the ovulation, egg survives only for 24 hours, and after that, if the fertilization will not take place within 24 hours, it degenerates and dies. And then when the egg degenerates, then the thickened lining of the endometrium or the thickened lining of the uterus is no longer required by the organism, by the female. So it get broken and it comes out along with lot of blood and mucus for about 2 to 8 days, and this is called as menstruation. So menstruation take place only when the egg is not fertilized. Okay, so that is the answer. Now draw a well labeled diagram of longitudinal section of a flower. So you can see the diagram here. So this diagram you can directly draw from your book. Page number is not here, but then figure number 8.7 is here, so you can draw it from this video also as well as from your NCERT directly. And the next question is, what are the different methods of contraception? Already we have discussed about the different methods of contraception. Now what is contraception? Contraception is the method which can avoid pregnancy. Okay. So these basically I have told you 4 methods: barrier method, hormonal method, then intrauterine contraceptive devices, and then surgical methods. So in the barrier method, we have discussed that barrier method, there is a physical or mechanical barrier is there which do not allow the sperms to meet the egg. So if the sperm will not meet the egg, there will be no fertilization. No fertilization means there will be no zygote is formed, and then there will be no implantation and no pregnancy is there. Hormonal method, in the hormonal method I have told you that female can take female sex hormone. So what is that female sex hormone? That progesterone can be taken by the females in the form of pills, and these pills are called as oral contraceptive. Okay, and what they do actually, they prevent ovulation. So without egg there will be no fertilization. So that is how hormonal method works. And then we have IUCDs or intrauterine contraceptive devices like copper T or loop. So we insert them into the uterus. By this is done by a qualified doctor or a qualified nurse. So what happens, they do not allow the sperms to reach the ovum, or they decrease the speed of the sperms, they kill the sperms. Okay, or even if fertilization takes place, they makes the uterus unsuitable for implantation. So this is done by the intrauterine contraceptive devices. And the last one is the surgical method. Now surgical method includes surgery in males as well as in females. Okay, so in the surgical method, vas difference in the males, vas difference is blocked, and this process is called as vasectomy. And in the females, the fallopian tube or the oviduct is blocked, and this process is called as tubectomy. So this is the answer of the question number 8. Now let us move to question number 9. How are the modes of reproduction different in unicellular and multicellular organisms? So how these are different means, so let us talk about unicellular organisms. Are very simple organisms, so they do not require more complex ways of reproduction. But as we know, multicellular organisms are not simply random collection of cells. They are organized. Our cells are organized to form tissues, and tissues are organized to form organs and organ systems. So we cannot simply divide cell by cell. So that is why our modes of reproduction is also different in unicellular as well as in multicellular organism. So in unicellular organism, asexual reproduction takes place, and in multicellular organism, sexual reproduction is preferred by the organisms. Okay, so in unicellular organism, only one organism is required, means sexual reproduction requires only one organism. And the multicellular organism, both male and female are required, two organisms are required. In sexual reproduction, no specialized cells are required, but in the sexual reproduction, specialized cells are required, that is called as gametes. Okay, and this is how these are the differences between the modes of reproduction in asexual and sexual reproduction, or in unicellular organisms or multicellular organisms. Now let us talk about the next question. How does reproduction helps in providing stability to the population of species? Now this is given on the second page of the book. So what is reproduction actually doing? I've already discussed this in one of my videos, which is given already given to you. And what happens during reproduction? So let us try to understand this. Okay, now during reproduction, two things are taking place. Number one is variation. So variations provide stability. How? Variation can make the organism better. Okay, they can help the organism to adapt. Variation helps in adaptation of organisms. Okay, so variation leads to adaptation of organisms. Okay, like we have seen the example of bacteria growing in the temperate waters. So when the temperature of the water increase due to global warming, only those bacteria which can survive in the high temperature can survive, and those bacteria which are not resistant to high temperature, they simply die. So what will happen? Only one type of bacteria will be there, because those who can live in the high temperature. And how they get the ability to live in the high temperature? Because of the variations, and because of that variation they are adapted to live in that particular environment. Okay, now next is consistency is also very important. So consistency of body design features. Okay, so consistency of body design features is important in reproduction. Okay, so during the reproduction, consistency of the body design features is also important, because this helps the organism to live in a particular niche. Like I have told you that I have given you the example of a lion. Lion is living in a niche, and what is doing there? It is doing hunting. So for hunting, let us talk about only two features. It requires speed and requires say teeth sharp teeth and claws. So lion for hunting requires speed and sharp teeth and claws. So the next generation of the lion should also have these features. Yes or no? Yes, obviously. If these features are not copied and they are not transferred to the next generation, then what will happen? Will they be able to hunt? No. So how they can be copied as it is? When there is consistency of the DNA copying. During the DNA copying, consistency is to be maintained. Of what? Of the body design features. So that is very important. So let us see. I have already mentioned here in the answer. So the answer is the introduction of variation during reproduction provides stability to the populations. And the second is the consistency of DNA copying during reproduction is also important for maintenance of body design features, so that the organism can use a particular niche. And number three is reproduction also helps to generate copies of individual, means multiply the organisms, multiply in number. Okay, so it also gives stability. So more number of organism means they are more stable, even if some of them will die, but the whole population will not be vanished from the surface of the earth. So therefore reproduction is linked to the stability of the population of species. I hope you understood the question. Now let us talk about the last, I think the last question is question number 11. So what could be the reasons for adopting contraceptive methods? So why the contraceptive methods can be used? So number one is to control the birth rate, because our country population is increasing, so we can prevent increase in population, and those who don't want to have children, they can use these contraceptive methods. Okay, then to keep gap between children, those couples, if they want to keep gap between children, they use contraceptive method. This is also one of the reason that you write it. Okay, To reduce the adverse effect on mother's body due to frequent pregnancy, means that is what I told you, gap between children, so that the mother can maintain the health. So it is very important for reproductive health. Okay, then to provide safety from sexually transmitted disease, I have told you that the barrier method is the only method which can also prevent STDs. Okay, so these are the some of the probable answers of the question. So with this we have completed the exercise question answers, and I hope that you will write them properly in your notebook. Thank you, students.